Hello everyone, I'm MrEliMac and welcome back to Pitch This here on the channel. And this is the show where I pitch a movie or a television show idea that I would love to see get made. Before I get into this idea, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps me, the channel, and it helps this video get out to more people. And I would love for this video to find more people. Also hit the notification bell, that way you can be notified whenever a new video like this goes public to the audience. And we're back with another edition of Spider-Man month, and after talking about how I'd continue the Raimi Spider-Verse, I've decided to talk about how I'd like to continue the Webb Spider-Verse, or as people like to call it, the Andrew Garfield Spider-Verse. So yes, I'm going to be pitching an idea that wouldn't have Andrew Garfield as our titular Spider-Man, no, but I would still set it in his little universe. So here's my pitch for Ultimate Spider-Man. And if you're a big comic book fan, you'd know that Ultimate Spider-Man was the debut of Miles Morales as Spider-Man, and he's the character that I'm going to be focusing on. Yes, this movie and this universe will be the movie that will feature the debut of a live-action Miles Morales. And I know a lot of people want Miles to be in the main MCU, but I honestly think that Marvel wants to continue with Tom Holland as their Spider-Man for as long as possible. So this is my alternative to having Miles as Spider-Man. So sit back, relax as we get into the movie pitch for Ultimate Spider-Man. The year is 2014. A young African-American boy plays in the street on a hot summer day, and his parents watch from their apartment building, and his dad stands with a police badge on his waist. Suddenly, the ground begins to shake as the young man looks up and sees a mechanical rhino running down the street. And the rhino moves closer and closer, and the dad of the child tries to run out on the street, but the shaking of the rhino running across the street causes him to fall down with his wife. And again, the rhino continues to move closer and closer and closer, but Spider-Man swings by and saves the kid. And after saving the kid, Spider-Man is able to stop the rhino and get the man out of the suit. Spidey quips about the man wearing the rhino boxers and webs him up. He swings away as the rhino is forced to not move. The dad runs up to the kid and shouts his son's name, Miles. And Miles Morales looks up at Spider-Man, swinging away with a smile on his face. And all that runs through his head is wanting to be just like his hero, Spider-Man. And then we cut to 10 years later, 2024, as Miles is at Brooklyn Visions Academy. In my version, this is a high school and not a middle school, because I think it was originally a middle school, but in this version, it is a high school. So, he's at Brooklyn Visions Academy, and he makes his way through the day, excelling in all of his classes. And he's met by his friend, Gank Lee, who tries to get Miles to come out to a party with him. But Miles tells him that he needs to focus on his studies. But Gank tells him that Barbara Rodriguez is going to be at the party. And Miles looks up and over to Gank, and Miles asks him, where is it going to be? And so we cut to a party where Miles and Gank try to enjoy their time there, and that's when Miles meets up with Barbara Rodriguez. Miles tries to have a conversation with her, but his nerves are starting to take over his body. However, she takes him in kind and doesn't make fun of him, of course. And as the party goes on, the cops drive up to break the party up. And all of the teens try to scatter away, but Gank and Miles are caught by Miles' father, Jefferson Davis. And Jefferson looks at his son and his friend and sighs in annoyance. Jefferson drives Gank and Miles back to their dorm, and after Gank leaves, Jefferson asks Miles to stay. Gank says that he'll meet Miles in their room, and Jefferson has a heart-to-heart with Miles about what could happen if someone other than his dad caught him. Miles tries to defend himself, saying that he was just trying to be like any other teenager, but Jefferson tells him that he needs to be better than any other teenager. Jefferson tries to tell his son that the world won't give him things in life, but Miles can only hear his father not believing in him. And after Jefferson is done, Miles rolls his eyes and leaves. Jefferson tries to stop him, but Miles ignores him and goes to his room. Back in his room, Miles and Gank have a conversation about the party and Miles' dad. Eventually, Gank is able to divert the conversation to the internship at Horizon Labs. Miles mentions that he's not interested in applying for the internship, but Gank is able to mention that it'll be great on his resume in the future. Like maybe someone from a great company will eventually hire him. And who knows, maybe this could end up actually turning into a job at Horizon Labs. And with that little notion in his head, Miles takes the application and fills it out. But meanwhile, at the Manfredi headquarters, Silvio Manfredi, aka Silvermane, meets with his lieutenants and chastises all of them. He talks about how they have all failed in trying to kill Spider-Man. Now, the Manfredi crime family is all but eradicated. Silvio asks if anyone has any plans on what to do next, when suddenly a man walks up behind Silvio and breaks his neck. The lieutenants look up and see Joseph Martello, aka Hammerhead, standing behind Manfredi. They look at each other as Hammerhead adjusts his cufflinks. He tells them that he's in charge now, and if they have a problem with that, they can talk to his enforcer. And out from the shadows steps a man in purple and green with a purple mask covering his entire face. This is the Prowler, and the lieutenants don't say anything. Hammerhead smiles and starts telling them his plan to kill Spider-Man. And the next day, the students of Brooklyn Visions Academy go on a tour of Horizon Labs. The students that want to apply for the internship turn their applications in and are given a tour by the newest employee at Horizon Labs, Peter Parker. Peter talks about all of the innovations at Horizon Labs and talks about the owner of the company as well, Max Modell. And at his mention, Max Modell enters the room and greets all of the students. Max describes them as the future of science. He shows them a new project that they're working on with spiders. Max looks at Peter and assures the kids that they are not planning on creating another Spider-Man, but they do want to be able to solve illnesses through their research of the spiders. And after Max finishes, Peter takes the kids back around the building. Miles continues to look at the spiders, and he looks at one specifically that is labeled 42. He thinks back to his time being saved by Spider-Man and finally returns to his classmates after examining the spider. It's at this moment when the spider finds a way to get out and follows Miles. And after the tour, Peter accidentally bumps into Miles, and the two strike up a conversation. Miles talks about how cool it is that they're working with spiders. He recounts his time with Peter about being saved by Spider-Man, and Peter smiles and tells Miles that Spider-Man would love to know that he did some good in the world. And the two separate as Spider 42 crawls up onto Miles. When the students get back to BVA, Gank and Miles talk about what would happen if either of them will get the internship, but Miles is a little bit calmer about it and says that he'll worry about it if it actually happens. And that's when they hear a knock on the door. And Miles answers it, and he sees that it's his uncle Aaron Davis at the door. He hugs him, and Aaron returns the hug. Aaron asks Miles if he has some time to slip away, and Miles quickly agrees. Gank tries to warn Miles about what his dad said, but Miles doesn't care. That night, Miles spends the night hanging out with Aaron, but Aaron asks what Gank meant earlier. And Miles explains what his dad said to him, and Aaron is understanding of his dad. Aaron tells Miles that his dad is always looking out for what's best. Miles asks Aaron if he was like this when he was younger, and Aaron says yes, but he always knew how to get into trouble as well. And after the night is done, Aaron brings Miles back to BVA and tells him to go easy on his old man. Once the two separate, Miles is bit by Spider 42, but Miles quickly slaps it as the spider falls off of his hand dead. The next day, Miles wakes up feeling different. That entire day, he goes through trying to get used to the powers that he's just received, like sticking to the wall, going invisible, the venom blast, all of it. He even starts noticing that he is just like Spider-Man. That night, he tries to call his Uncle Aaron, but he doesn't answer. Suddenly, he hears a loud boom close by. He runs over to the boom and sees Spider-Man fighting the Prowler. And after a few minutes of watching them fight, Spider-Man is knocked out and hidden under the debris. Miles hears the voice of Hammerhead telling him to look for Spider-Man. And with that, Miles quickly runs up and takes Spider-Man away. Later, Spider-Man wakes up in a warehouse. He lifts up and sees Miles across from him. Miles greets Spider-Man and tells him everything that he saw. Spider-Man thanks Miles for saving him, but he needs to stop Hammerhead. And as he's trying to stand up, Peter falls back down, still in pain, and Miles also tells him that he got bit by a spider. Miles shows Spider-Man that he can stick to walls and he might be able to help him. Spider-Man at first says no, but Miles tells him that he has to use these powers for something, that it should be his responsibility to help people. And Spider-Man laughs, hearing the word power and responsibility used together, and agrees. He takes off his mask, then introduces himself as Peter Parker, and Miles chuckles, seeing the tour guide from Horizon Labs as Spider-Man. And so for the rest of the movie, mainly for Act 2, we'll see Miles with a little romance with Barbara Rodriguez. We'll see him trying to get used to being Spider-Man around his dad and his mom. Gank would also be involved in this little Spider-Man stuff, but it will also mainly be Peter training Miles to be Spider-Man. And it would sort of be what Peter would do with Miles in the Spider-Man game, at least the stuff we didn't see in between all the cutscenes. Meanwhile, Hammerhead and Prowler would still try to search for Spider-Man, with Hammerhead thinking that Spider-Man is either dead or not dead. They would look for him whenever they would hear there are some sightings of Spider-Man, but then once they didn't see Spider-Man anywhere, Hammerhead would start thinking that Spider-Man is dead. And so during this time, Miles would want to try and stop Hammerhead, but Peter would tell him that he's not ready. And this would cause Miles to help some local places in the Brooklyn area. And he would also be wearing his own homemade Spider-Man suit. And this brings him to the attention of Hammerhead. And Prowler is sent to attack this Spider-Man, and Miles and Prowler have a small fight, with Prowler getting the upper hand. And right before Prowler can kill Miles, Peter comes in and saves Miles. This would cause Peter to kick Prowler's mask off to reveal him to be Aaron Davis. Miles would stand up and call him Uncle Aaron. Prowler would stop and look at the second Spider-Man. He recognizes the voice and says, "Miles?" Miles would then take off the mask and stare at his uncle. Peter would stick to the wall and just watch the interaction. Miles would start questioning his uncle, but Aaron would try to defend his actions, but Miles would tell his uncle that he's working for a deadly crime boss. And with that, Aaron would suddenly hear Hammerhead on his earpiece. Hammerhead would ask if the job is done, and Aaron would say that the guy got away, referring to Miles. And then Hammerhead would mention that it's interesting that he would say that since he can see all three of them together. And Aaron looks out of the window and sees Hammerhead's goons running towards the warehouse. Aaron grabs his mask and tells them both to get out. Peter starts talking to Miles and trying to get him out, but Miles tells Peter that they have to help. But Peter would tell Miles that they're not strong enough yet. Miles uses his powers and turns invisible. Peter would call out to Miles, but Miles would ignore it and help Aaron fight off Hammerhead's men. However, Miles and Aaron would get overwhelmed, with Aaron saving Miles but getting shot in the process. Aaron pushes Miles out of the warehouse to have Peter get him out. Aaron falls to his knees as Hammerhead enters the warehouse. Hammerhead looks down and tells him that he trusted him. And he would ask Aaron why he would turn his back on him. And Aaron tells Hammerhead that he's not family. Hammerhead places hands on Aaron's head, and he appreciates the dedication to family. Then he would snap Aaron's neck and let him go. Hammerhead tells his men to look for the Spider-Men. And that's when we would cut to Peter and Miles arguing with each other. Miles continues to defend that they should have stayed and help his uncle, but Peter tells them that they were outnumbered. Though it is their responsibility to help people, they must also know when it is best to regroup. And Miles continued to say that Peter doesn't know what it's like to have to watch his uncle die. And Peter explains to Miles that he watched his uncle die. He watched the love of his life die, but he had to keep going. Peter tells Miles that he understands. He tells Miles that he's going to go after Hammerhead, but just not with Miles. Instead, Miles needs to sit on the sidelines, but Miles tries to disagree, but Peter tells him that he needed to wait, and he didn't. Peter swings away and leaves Miles alone. Miles goes home and sees his parents. Jefferson tells Miles what happened to Aaron, and Jefferson tells him that the police are going to get Hammerhead. Miles tells his dad that no one's going to be able to get Hammerhead. Spider-Man's never been able to get Hammerhead, and Jefferson begins to explain why Spider-Man won't help people. He even explains that bad things the Spider-Man has done before now. Basically explaining everything that Andrew's Peter explained to Tom Holland's Peter in No Way Home. And Miles listens to this and goes to his room when Jefferson is done. His parents allow him to stay the night instead of going back to school to his dorm. So that night, Miles sneaks out and meets up with Peter at the warehouse they've been training at. Miles and Peter talk about everything Peter has gone through. Peter tells him that he doesn't want anyone else to get hurt. Not again. Not after Gwen. Miles tells him that if they work together, no one will get hurt. That you just have to believe in me. You have to trust me. Peter accepts Miles' help and even tells him that he has something for him. And he hands him a suit that's similar to his own. Miles looks at it and asks if he can change it up a bit. And so we cut to Hammerhead's headquarters, and Peter swings around and takes out some of his guys, with Miles using his additional powers to take out the rest. Peter hops into Hammerhead's office and greets him. Hammerhead, though, wastes no time, and the two start fighting. And that's when Miles comes in with his new suit on, the black and red one, the one that we sort of see in the game. Hammerhead chuckles and presses a button on his desk, and he falls to the floor only to emerge with a mech suit on. Again, similar to the one in the game. I really love the Spider-Man game. The two Spideys fight off against Hammerhead and eventually disable the suit enough to get Hammerhead out. But that's when Hammerhead eventually runs at Peter and hits him with his head, knocking Peter out. We then get a Miles versus Hammerhead fight. Hammerhead tries to use his head as the main weapon, but Miles is able to avoid the attacks. And after a few minutes, Hammerhead mentions that Aaron was a good hand, but he shouldn't have betrayed him. And Miles gets more aggressive and wants to kill Hammerhead, but Miles realizes that that's not the path he should take. Miles instead uses his Venom Blast to knock Hammerhead out, specifically touching his head right there. Peter regains consciousness and sees Miles web up Hammerhead. Peter says that he's proud of him. And so we cut to a few days later, where it's revealed that Miles will be the newest intern at Horizon Labs. Miles goes to Horizon and meets with Max Modell. Max tells Miles that he's going to be working under Peter Parker. Miles and Peter smile at each other, and that's when we cut to both of them swinging through the streets of New York. Both of the Spider-Man next to each other, just swinging through the city of New York. And then we would see Miles sort of swing across the Brooklyn Bridge, where he's swinging through Brooklyn all by himself. And that's when we'd see many kids looking up at Miles, smiling to see Spider-Man. And that's when Miles would shoot up into the air to feel what it's like to be the ultimate Spider-Man. And that's how I would make Ultimate Spider-Man. This is a story that I really wanted Andrew Garfield's Peter to be a mentor, similar to the one in the Spider-Man game. And make no mistake, if I were to fully pitch out the full story, Miles would be the main character. It's not a dual main character slot. Miles would be the main character. Peter would just be a supporting character. I just didn't want to kill Peter. It's also difficult to tell Miles' origin story again when Into the Spider-Verse did it perfectly, so I tried to combine the Spider-Man game with Into the Spider-Verse. And so, yeah, I really loved both of those stories and how they told Miles' story, so I just really wanted to take both of them and put them together. That's also sort of a reason why Hammerhead is the big bad, because Hammerhead was the big bad of the DLC of the Spider-Man game, and I really liked how they work Hammerhead into that story. But next week, we're going to be taking a trip to the future. Specifically, we're going to be going to the year 2099. But in the meantime, what were your thoughts on the pitch? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Were you indifferent to it? Whatever your thoughts, post them in the comments down below, right down there, right there. Hey, comments, put them down there. Also, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps me a lot here for the channel. Also, hit the notification button. That way you can be notified whenever a new video like this goes live. With all that being said, I've been MrEliMac, you've been the audience, and I hope you all have a great rest of the day.